Yes.
Okay, so a couple of housekeeping things.
You want to do, Michelle, you want to do full screen slideshow?
Okay, I'm sorry. That's what you can't see.
From the beginning.
Okay, hold on. Hold on. Okay. All right, there we go.
Thank you.
All right, so a couple of housekeeping things. I will be putting everyone on mute just to keep some of the background noise down. If you have questions as I'm going through the slides, this is a PowerPoint presentation. Please put your questions in the chat room, and then I'll try to address them even maybe as I go along, but I'll definitely address them at the end. Also, at the end, I will unmute everybody so that if there are comments or additional questions, we'll allow you to participate then. I think that's it. So I'm going to put everybody on mute. Renee, I am going to unmute, keep you unmuted. Okay, Renee, I'm trying to see where you are. Oh, you're under Stephen Prado. Well, I have 4 Stephen Prados, so I'm unmuting all of them. Okay.
Okay, I'm unmuted, but I'm gonna put myself back on mute.
Okay, all right, great. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. Again, my name is Michelle Clark Jenkins, and I head the consulting group of Griffin and Strong. We are a law and public policy consulting firm out of Atlanta, Georgia. I also am the...
I was gonna, that bag that I had for yard sale.
I'm sorry, who was that? I'm also the project manager on this project. Also on the phone with me is Omika Edmondson, who is the deputy project manager. It's important for you to know who she is because as we collect some of our anecdotal evidence for the study, you'll interact with her a lot. We also have on the line our local subcontractor, Amazing Marketing. So May Escobar and Marianne Beach are on the line, I see, for our subcontractors. You'll also be interacting with them. They'll be doing some interviews and participating in other ways with us on this study. So I first want to start off by talking about what a disparity study is. There are a lot of misconceptions about what it is. And disparity studies are really an objective research tool that'll help to determine whether a government entity is actively or passively discriminated against certain groups due to their race or gender. These studies are also used to look at race neutral groups. And in fact, this study is, we're not just looking at minorities and women, we're looking at disabled, we're looking at veterans, and we're looking at LGBTE. So it can be used for that purpose as well in order to determine availability and utilization of firms. Disparity studies look at discrimination, or they try to uncover discrimination, which can be the current effects of past discrimination, or it could be current discrimination. And we determine that through a statistical analysis and also by gathering anecdotal evidence, which is where you all come in, as well as an examination of their current policies and procedures. At the end of all of this, we will have findings from the study. We will make recommendations to Bexar County, and the recommendations, if accepted, are intended to be implemented as policy. And we say that so that you understand how important your participation in this study is. So this is why Bexar County is doing the disparity study. There are four main reasons for this. One is to identify the best practices that will help the county build a business program to stimulate local business economic growth and development, to assure equitable participation of local, minority, and women-owned businesses in the county's contracts and purchase orders, to promote a sound fiduciary relationship with local businesses, to reinforce social responsibility toward the local business community. So I want to tell you a little bit about our firm, and I'm also going to introduce you to our team. It's quite an extensive team, so I'll probably go very quickly through this. So the firm of Griffin and Strong, like I told you, is based in Atlanta. This is what we specialize in: disparity research. We do contract compliance. We do supplier diversity consulting. We implement and develop remedial programs. We draft legislation. This is our playpen. This is where we work. We have a very qualified team. We have 4 lawyers, 2 PhD economists, a PhD statistician, and a PhD candidate in anthropology. And all of our experts have expertise in this area of disparity research, and all of them are hands-on with the study. We are very sensitive to the fact that disparity studies result in certain programs that many times are attacked legally. So we make sure that our studies are sound and legally defensible, and no study we've done has ever been challenged or overturned in court. This just lists out some of the pertinent experience that we've had. We've done some work in Texas. We've done a lot of county work throughout the country. So we just listed some of the relevant experience we have and our team has in the relevant areas. So here's our project team. So May Escobar, who's actually on the line with us today, and May, I'm gonna unmute you just so you can say hi. I saw her there. Oh, there she is. May and Marianne, are you there?
Yes, am I unmuted? This is Marianne Beach.
You're unmuted. Go ahead.
This is Marianne Beach with Amazing Marketing, and I will be conducting some of the anecdotal interviews that are required by this study. Thank you.
Yeah. So they have already helped us in the sense of even getting out the information. They did an amazing job getting all of you information so you could join this meeting. They will also be getting out information about future meetings that we're having related to the study, and also doing some of the interviews. So take a look at that face, because May and Marianne will be conducting interviews as well. That's me. I'm the project manager. I've worked for Griffin and Strong now for 11 years. I think the slide says 23. I think I'm actually add a few to that. Disparity studies, goal settings, and developing, particularly my expertise is in helping with post-study guidance. Austin Broussard has been our deputy project manager. I also told you that Omika is on with us as well. They will both be helping us in terms of being a second to me. You will see a lot of both of them throughout this study. Dr. Vince Egan is our principal investigator. He's been involved in over 120 disparity studies. He has successfully defended on a number of cases, been the expert witness to defend a number of programs throughout the country. And he's both an attorney and an economist. So he helps to marry those two areas. Our chief statistician, Ram Hagigi, is actually based right there in Texas. He's based out of Austin, Texas. He is credited with conducting the largest disparity study ever done. And of course, that's for your great state of Texas. Our other economist and senior economist is Dr. Gregory Price. And he's a theorist. So he helps to oversee, and I'll talk about this later, our private sector analysis. Anecdotal analysis is done by Imani Strong-Tucker, who is our PhD candidate in anthropology at the London School of Economics. So she'll help us to tell the story. David Maher is our legal analyst. He has been involved in, I think he's got 14 here. He's got a few more on top of that. And he will take a look at our, keep a lookout to make sure that we are on the right roads in terms of our methodology. You know, there's always a development in the law in this area, and he'll keep track of that along the way. Our project administration is Susan Johnson. She's next to our CEO. She's been here the longest with more than 30 studies under her belt. And we have a data scientist, that's what they call them these days, the people who know how to use all of the different programs. We're always looking for ways to have a better look at our data. And so Omar Beg is our data analyst. And then finally, our project executive, Rodney Strong. Again, this company has been around now 27 years. Rodney has been president and CEO of the company that whole time. He was the former director of contract compliance for the city of Atlanta and was one of the principal architects to the Atlanta's EBO program, which really became a model for the nation. He was also the project manager on the first major municipal study, disparity study, after the Croson decision came out. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a minute. So this is our methodology. Here's what the process of a disparity study looks like. Some of you will wonder why it takes a year for us to complete it. And it's really because we're looking at a lot of different components. I'm going to go through hopefully quickly and in a way that everybody will understand what I'm talking about. Each one of these processes that goes into a disparity study. It's the legal analysis. We do a policy and procedures review. A substantial amount of our time is in collecting and cleaning data. Probably half of the time is doing that while we're doing other things simultaneously. We look at what marketplace are we studying. We look at the utilization of firms, the availability of firms. We compare the availability and utilization to determine a disparity. We look at private sector analysis, which is a little bit of a misnomer. It's actually a study of the marketplace as a whole, not just Bexar County. And then that anecdotal analysis, which is where a lot of you will come into play. And then finally, our report with recommendations that will be both race neutral and race conscious. And we'll talk about what that means. So why do we do disparity studies in the first place? And it's because there really was a time when a lot of municipalities and counties and states and even the federal government had programs to benefit. Originally it started off with minority, and then of course women were added, and then other groups were added to provide an opportunity for there to be a level playing field based on the fact that there had been societal discrimination against certain groups of people, particularly certain ethnicities. So a lot of these government agencies had programs, and in 1989, the Supreme Court said you can't do that. They said that even though you were trying to remedy a past malevolent discrimination, someone trying to harm you, that you could not fix that with a benevolent discrimination. In other words, a treatment of not everyone being equal, unless you could prove that through a combination of statistical and anecdotal or qualitative and quantitative research. So in other words, the Supreme Court said after 1989, you can't have any race and then later gender programs without proving the existence of discrimination. So that came in 1989. Rodney, our CEO, a number of other attorneys and economists from around the country have been watching this case come up through the Supreme Court. And what the court said was, anything that's race or gender, we don't care whether it's to help people or to harm them, will be looked at with kind of a jaundiced eye and what they called strict scrutiny. So we're going to look at these in a way that says you have to really have a very compelling interest, state interest, for overriding treating everybody equally. And so, and then on top of that, once you do put a program in place, your program has to be narrowly tailored to whatever it is that you proved, where you proved there was discrimination. So what the disparity study became what's called a factual predicate. It became that compelling state interest. So this research that we're doing for you is what is necessary for you to have and continue any kind of a race or gender conscious program. Right now, you really don't have that. Right now, you really have more of a race neutral program. In other words, you're still attacking the issue, but you're attacking it in a way, you're attacking disparities now in a way that is race and gender neutral. So you're not looking at, well, you know, we have a certain goal or we have a certain set aside for any kind of minority or women-owned firms. So this birthed really the disparity study, which says you have to have this, and the outcome of that study, if it demonstrates that there's been a disparity, also has to be narrowly tailored in terms of its recommendations. And that disparity study has to first, I mean, any kind of remedy has to first really look at race and gender neutral remedies. Again, like what you have there in Bexar County, you really have to look first as to whether you can resolve the issue of inequities by race neutral means. And what I mean by race neutral means are things like small business programs or other things that may solve the issue, but are not specifically named as race or gender conscious. And race and gender conscious programs are those which specifically talk about race and gender. So one of the things we'll be looking at, and what's critical here, is to look at the purchasing practices and procedures that Bexar County has in place right now. It's not just background. A lot of it is kind of what are you doing now? And particularly we want to look at those because we want to see how they affect your numbers. Because, for example, if you already have a race and gender conscious program and we're seeing certain numbers, we understand that the numbers we're seeing may be because of the programs you have. Even if you have a race and gender neutral program, the good numbers that we see may be based on that program. So there are times when we have to look at what would happen if there was no program. So we take a look at a but-for analysis. The other reason we look at policies are these three reasons that are on the screen. One, we want to see if any of the present policies that the county has present barriers to minority, disadvantaged, disabled, veteran, or LGBT community, or the LGBT community. Also, do procurement personnel and the end users understand the policies and procedures as they're written? And then, is there a disconnect between the written policies and the procedures? So at the end of the day, when we make our recommendations, we're looking to see what policies and procedures could be modified to better promote inclusion. So this is very much a data-driven study. We are gathering and Renee and her group have given us a lot of data, and we are gathering 5 years worth of data. And this includes prime as well as subcontractor data. We're looking at, and because we have to determine who they've been using, and we also have to determine what firms are available in the marketplace. And a lot of that data comes directly from the county. And the study does include all the county offices and departments. We're looking at all the work categories: construction, professional services, other services, goods and commodities. We're looking at all formal and informal procurements. We're also getting some third-party data, particularly certified lists and vendor lists, because part of what we're doing is trying to assemble a good list of the ready, willing, and able firms in the marketplace. So there's a lot of data. There's a lot of data cleaning. There's a lot of data maintaining a chain of evidence. We want to keep you informed about the data. There's a lot of transparency. At the end of this, the data will come back to the county so that the county has the data that we used for the analysis, because we will spend a lot of time cleaning data and organizing it, hopefully in a way that will be useful for the county even once we're done. So the first thing we have to do, once we've got all the data, once we've got it all cleaned and organized, is the first thing we have to decide is, what are we studying? What's the market that we're studying? And that's looked at 2 ways. One is, what's the geography of the marketplace? Are we just studying firms in Bexar County? Are we studying firms in the whole MSA, across the state, across certain counties? And the way we determine that is we look at where Bexar County is spending their dollars. So wherever the firms are, where you're spending your dollars, where at least 75% of them are, that is what we will determine to be your relevant market. And the firms within that geographic area are the ones that we're studying. We also are looking at the product market. So for example, if we have firms on our list who are hairdressers, and the county doesn't buy hairdressing services, which we absolutely know that it does for at least the jails, then hairdressing would not be in our analysis if in fact it's not something that the county buys. So those 2 are kind of the parameters around which the study is conducted. And only firms that are both within the geographic marketplace and within the product marketplace will be included in the study. So one of the things we have to determine is ready, willing, and able firms. Who are they? Who are the firms who we're going to count when we say who are the available firms in the marketplace? And we do that in 2 ways. We do it from what's called a list approach, which is to pull all the governmental lists together that we can find, all of the certified lists we can find, and put them all kind of in a big pool that we call a master vendor file, and take out duplicates and figure out who all those firms are. And those would be bidders, their vendors, their subcontractors, their suppliers, their awardees, their subs, they're as far down in the tier as we can go. And so we're using all of these government lists, and then we say these are all the available firms in that marketplace. The other way to do it is something called the custom census, for which we take Dun & Bradstreet's data, which is Hoover data, and we call the firms who are on that list, or at least a substantial sample of them, and we ask them questions that tell us whether they are ready, willing, and able to be available to do work for Bexar County. At the top, you'll see I also have a threshold analysis. A threshold analysis tells us what level of contracting Bexar County is doing. That's important because, for example, let's say Bexar County, their average contract is $5 million. And we've got a lot of subcontractors in our list. We might determine that if we've got $5 million contracts as an average, there are a number of firms who may not be able to operate as primes on an average contract. But if the county's average contract is 250 or 300 or 500,000, then a lot of firms who are presently only doing subcontracting work may be able to move over and with some supportive services begin to become primes. So it's a very important part for us to look at that. And also we look at the inequities, if there are any, between ethnic groups and the level of contracting that they're being awarded. So for example, if Hispanic American owned firms in the marketplace, which by the way, we will have a determination of that, say that they are getting contracts that are $1 million plus, but yet with Bexar County, they're only getting contracts that are $300,000 and under. We know that there is some unutilized capacity that Bexar County could be utilizing those firms on a greater level. Then of course, we're looking at what firms have actually been utilized, who's getting both prime and sub awards. This is pretty cut and dried as opposed to availability, which, you know, we're putting groups, we're doing it a couple of ways. We're cutting and dicing it a couple of ways to look at it. But with utilization, it's pretty cut and dried. Who did you use? And how much money did you pay them over the last 5 years? And we disaggregate that by each ethnic group. So you will see in our study, not just minorities, but you'll see African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, Caucasian women, and firms that are non-minority, non-women. You'll also see, of course, all of the race and gender neutral groups as well, the veterans, disabled, and LGBT. So a disparity is determined by comparing availability to utilization. And again, by example, if I have 100 engineering firms in my marketplace, in what we've now determined to be the relevant geographic marketplace, and of those 100 engineering firms, 10 of them are African American owned, then we have a 10% availability. But then when we look at the dollars that Bexar County is spending with African American owned firms in engineering, and they're only spending 1% of those dollars with African American firms, we've got a 10% availability compared to a 1% utilization. Clearly there's a disparity there. We then have to test to see if that disparity is significant. A 10% availability to a 1% utilization clearly is significant, but suppose it was 9% compared to 10%, that may not be significant. We then have to take it one step further, and we have to determine whether in fact it's likely that disparity is caused by the race and gender of the owner. And by doing that, we do a regression analysis. And we do a regression analysis that equalizes other factors, things like how long the firm's been in business, how big the firm is, what their revenues are, the education of the owner, all the things where if we said, listen, there's a disparity here, people could say, well, maybe that's for other reasons. We try to take all those other reasons, equalize the data through a regression analysis. And if there's still a disparity left at the end of that, the law now allows us to make a legal inference of discrimination. And that's kind of how you prove the existence of discrimination. After we look at what Bexar County is doing, we also look at what's happening in the marketplace. And so in the marketplace itself, outside of Bexar County, maybe what other public and private contracting is happening. And so we want to see if there's discrimination in the marketplace, because the courts have said that even if Bexar County is not, we find no discrimination in their contracting. And again, it's this legal inference of discrimination. Even if we don't find that, but we find it in the marketplace, a government entity can be the change agent for what's happening in its marketplace. Again, by example, if this were certain eras, not too long ago, you might have seen 0 African-American owned construction companies and 0 were being used. If we only use this comparison between availability and utilization, it would say there are 0 companies, 0 have been used, no discrimination. But what's called the passive discrimination analysis allows us to do is look at the incidence of self-employment, the availability of credit markets, the certification directory, to help us to figure out whether in fact there's been any discrimination in the marketplace as a whole that may have caused some utilization disparities, both there and perhaps inside Bexar County. So here's where we need particularly your input. Anecdotal evidence, after we've done the gathering of all of this statistical information, will tell us whether in fact there are inequities in the contracting that Bexar County is doing. But it doesn't necessarily tell us how to fix it. And it doesn't tell us the story of what's going on in your jurisdiction. You tell us that story. You tell us how we might be able to fix it. You tell us by your experiences where the issues lie. We've been in jurisdictions where we see the numbers, but as we talk to businesses in the marketplace, the way to rectify it can be very different, like night and day different, because of what we hear are the issues. I mean, we've been in jurisdictions where things like prompt pay is a huge problem that has kept small businesses in general, and in particular minority and women-owned businesses, from being able to work with a jurisdiction because they take 6 months to pay you. So, I mean, we would not know that unless we do anecdotal evidence collection. It could be any number of issues that that Bexar County could be doing differently. And by the way, we want to hear what they're doing well, because that helps them to understand that that's something they need to continue to do. So we do that through a lot of ways. This informational meeting, for which at the end you'll give me some questions and comments. May and her group will be doing anecdotal interviews. With some of you one-on-one will be asked and called to participate in that. All of you should be getting the survey of business owners, which goes out to the broadest group of firms that we can have. I think right now, the list we've got is probably 25,000 firms at the very least, and I'm sure that list will begin to grow, who will provide the survey to. Not that many usually will respond, but we'll get 500 or 600 plus to 1,000 firms who will respond to that survey of business owners that helps us to see generally what's happening in the marketplace. Probably early fall, we'll begin the public hearings, for which you'll have an opportunity to literally come up and tell us about your experiences kind of on the record. We will have focus groups, and then civic and trade organizations we will be meeting with individually. So if you're part of an organization, please email us or contact us, and I will be giving you that contact information at the end of this. If you would give us that information, we kind of have the chambers, we have an extensive list that we got from Renee to reach out to organizations. If you are part of an organization, we have probably reached out to you even for this meeting. If your organization did not get something from us, again, I would hope that you would contact us, or please make sure again that your information is in the chat room. I'll repeat that because I know a lot of people joined us after I announced that if you have joined us, if you would put the name of your business or your organization with your name in the chat room so that we know that you're here. We also will accept emails, and again, we have a dedicated email address for you to give us your comments and your or questions. One of the other things I might mention is that we do have a dedicated website for the study, and actually, I will wait until I finish, but I'll show you that website that you can go to, and we'll give you the URL for that as well. So at the end of the study, what will you expect to see? You should see from us recommendations, findings, and our findings will be kind of what they are. They will be from all of those analysis that I spoke about earlier. We will give you all of the findings from that. From those findings, we will make recommendations. And it is important to know that we cannot make a recommendation that is not backed by a finding. And that has to do with what I said about how the courts view this. I have to, or the firm has to come up with recommendations that are narrowly tailored to the findings of the study. So, for example, if we were to find that there was overutilization, in other words, the utilization of certain firms, certain groups of firms exceeded the availability of those firms, then we could not create a program that included that group. I know that's a hard question. Again, there's a little more that goes into that. So it means that if we were to, for example, find that Native American-owned firms had a 2% availability, but now they have a 20% utilization, we would find they have more utilization than they have availability in terms of percentages. So we would have to go back and look at why that is. It could be because there's a program in place that encouraged people to use Native Americans. And so then we'd have to say, well, where would their numbers be but for that program? So we might have to ratchet back that program a little bit, but we wouldn't necessarily take them fully out of the program. But if there was no program, we couldn't create a new one for them because there would be no reason for that program. So this is very important what I'm saying, because as we do these studies around the country, there is an expectation of the outcome of the study and what communities want. We have to be guided by what the study says. And those are the recommendations we have to make to the county. And so the percentages, the numbers that if we recommend certain kinds of availability, certain kinds of goals, we can't arbitrarily create those numbers. They have to be borne out by the statistics of the study. So the recommendations, we also will, of course, employ best practices. Again, there's a lot of things people are doing around the country that have become very innovative, actually. And we watch what people are doing. Not all of those will work in Bexar County, but the ones that are appropriate, we will put on the table to Bexar County as well. And there'll be both race neutral and race conscious remedies. There are some race neutral remedies that are actually, I think, more effective sometimes than some of the race conscious remedies. And that's borne out, honestly, in some of the work that Bexar County has already done. Without really having a strong race and gender conscious program, particularly through outreach and supportive services, it's done a yeoman's task, what we've seen so far, in keeping, trying to keep participation of firms and keeping them involved in the contracting process at Bexar County. So after the study happens, we will stay on to really work through our findings and recommendations with the county. We'll consult on the release of the county, and then we really want to help the county make a plan moving as to how it's going to move forward from the study. A study is no good if it just collects dust on a shelf somewhere. We really want to see these studies produce something. When our firm started, it really started to really help people to develop effective programs. And because you can't have a program, a lot of times if you don't have a disparity study, we got into the business of doing disparity studies, but we really are committed to seeing equity and inclusion happen in public contracting. And so this is what we do all around the country. Here's how you can get involved. If you are contacted, which is randomly, if you would participate in anecdotal interviews as you're requested, and you're going to get a phone call from Marianne and or May or someone who works for Amazing Marketing to participate in an anecdotal interview. The survey of business owners actually will not be random. That will go to the whole list. If you get that in the mail or in your email, and if you don't get it, it will be available on our website for you to download and to enter at that point. So be on the lookout to getting it in your own email or pulling it down. And that will probably go out in the next couple of months. So again, we'll promote that. If you are also contacted to participate in a focus group, please say yes to that. You've now participated in our informational meeting. We're very thankful for that. There is another one tomorrow night. So if you would please tell people, tomorrow afternoon from 12 to 1:30 p.m. Basically, this presentation will be done again. You can also email us at bearcountystudy@gspclaw.com. I'm going to leave the screen up for a minute if any of you wants to write that down. I can also
the email is also in the chat for everyone, as well as the dedicated website.
Okay, great. Thank you, Omika.
No problem.
So we're also involved on social media. So you can find us on Facebook or LinkedIn or tweet us or Twitter. And this is the website that Omika mentioned. And we are, in fact, up and running. The URL is working. So this is kind of what the schedule looks like. So right now, again, we're at winter spring. So really spring. We've informational meeting is today. We've already launched the website. We've done the legal review. We've done the data assessment. We're in the process of completing the draft of the policies and procedures actually this week. Data collection, we've been collecting data. We already had a lot of data because Renee's group was way ahead of us. The survey of business owners will probably go out in the next couple of months. We continue to work on preparing databases and we'll begin to collect anecdotal evidence. May, I think May's group starts in May to do interviews. So you will probably start to get phone calls probably in the next 3 weeks or so. Then in the fall, we'll be working on the analysis and the findings and recommendations. Probably early, it'll probably stretch into probably early 2021 that we'll be working on the draft and the final report, taking our time doing that. One of the things that's very important is that we get this data, we get this information, and we're able to kind of marry all this information together from the different areas. Because the policy and the anecdotal together tell us a lot, the data tells us a lot, but when we sit down and all of our different experts are able to sit down and really talk through their various areas, we find that there's usually some real consistency amongst all of these areas. So that's it. I'm going to go to the chat room and start to answer some of your questions in the chat room. The first question that I see.
I sent them to you, Michelle, so you should have them in your own chat. I went through the chat already.
Oh, you went through. Okay, so in defining the geographic area of the study, I understood that is determined by who Bexar County is doing business with now. By that, if Bexar County I do business with companies in Houston, Dallas, or out of state, the geographic area grows by that much. Please clarify. So I'm not sure I understand the question, but I'm going to unmute you and let you ask me yourself. Hold on one second.
Yes, this is Al Rodriguez, a marketing service company here in San Antonio.
So I wasn't sure I understood your question. Do you want to ask me again?
The way I understood, you defined geographical area. If Bexar County is doing business, it was going to be determined by who Bexar County is doing business with right now. So that gets away from just Bexar County. So if Bexar County is doing business with companies in Houston, Dallas, or out of state, then the geographical area of this study grows by that much.
So the way we determine geographic area is where they're spending at least 75% of their dollars. So we start with Bexar County. So we first look at Bexar County. What percentage of all their dollars are they spending in Bexar County? So that could be, let's say that 60% of their dollars are being spent in Bexar County. I don't know what the percentage is yet. Then we would then pull out to the next area, which probably would be the MSA, and say, okay, we didn't satisfy the 75% just within Bexar County. Let's go out a little further and look at the MSA. Let's say we don't satisfy the 75% just within the MSA. Because of Texas and how big it is, we then start to look at surrounding counties. Again, you start to radiate out from the area and surrounding counties until we get to that 75%. My guess is, and again, I have no idea, but my experience has been that generally, at least in the areas of construction and, well, particularly construction and other services, those tend to be firms that are not 500 miles away. Or at least even if their headquarters are that far away, they're firms that have offices within the jurisdiction. Where you really start to get a much broader relevant market is when you start to get into goods, because now people buy goods from all over the place. So that's where you probably will start to have a large percentage of your dollars spent probably throughout the state of Texas. But with construction, it's usually a lot closer in, but it is where it is because it's dictated by where Bexar County spends its dollars now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The next question. Hold on. Is age considered in any of the disparity studies? And the answer to that is no, it's not considered within any of the disparity studies, only because our scope of work doesn't include an age analysis. However, interestingly, when we do the regression analysis and we're looking at and we're looking at equalizing things, we do look at the length of time the business has been in business, which sometimes will begin to reflect the age of the owner. But that's probably as close as we come to it, because age is not a scope that we're looking at in this. And so age doesn't play a factor, the age of the owner. Let's see, I think, is that the only one? Oh, are you including data analysis of disabled business owners and veterans in this study? Yes, we are. It is both disabled business owners as well as veterans. So I think that's all of the questions. Amika, was that it, just the 3?
There's one more question. I'm sending it to you now. There's one last question.
Oh, I see this one. Will you be, is that the one, will you be reviewing Bexar County data based on certain dollar thresholds? Or are you,